So Jennifer asked me to come and talk about Mardi Gras, and I thought I would talk about the strategies that we have developed to generate Mardi Gras, appropriate Mardi Gras activity, Mardi Gras laughter. Laughter is at the heart of our Mardi Gras celebration. It is, in fact, at the heart of what we call Mardi Gras, which actually has roots in much older traditions. Our own Mardi Gras, with roots in Renaissance and medieval French tradition, and even earlier than that. I'll get back to that in a second. But the way that Carnival operated in the land of our ancestors' origins was to chronically, every once in a while, once a year or so, disrupt the normal way of things, turn things upside down, inside out, subvert, pervert, invert normal life. Ordinary folks in particular, the peasantry, the ordinary working classes in towns particularly thought this was hilarious. That is, the challenge to authority, turning authority upside down. It's the same reason that our ancestors also enjoy trickster tales. Tales that make fun of the upper classes or the people who are in charge. It's why we love jokes that cause crazy disruptions in spaces that are supposed to be quiet and calm and orderly, like courtrooms and churches, especially confessionals, and classrooms. Just to give you a very briefly a carnivalesque humor, an example of carnivalesque humor. A young girl, the priest was hearing confession, and he hears a voice he doesn't recognize, and so he asked the girl after she finishes confessing. He says, "Well, I don't recognize you. Are you not from? You're not from here?" She says, "No, I'm just traveling through with the circus." He said, "Oh, really? Well, that's nice. That's interesting. What do you do with the circus?" She says, "Well, I'm a contortionist." "Ah, that's. I haven't seen one of those since I was a kid," the priest says, sitting in the confessional. She says, "Well, we're going to be here all weekend. You'll be able to come and see me." He said, "Well, no, I got a baptism and 2 weddings and a funeral. I'm not going to be able to get away. I'm too busy." She said, "Well, that's too bad." She said, she said, "Can you take a break right now? I could give you a demonstration, right here." And he said, "Well, yeah, I can take a break. I'm not too busy." So he stops and he opens up the curtain for the confessional. She gets out of her side and sits on the floor and grabs one foot, puts it behind her head, and the other one takes it around this way, and she reaches around and grabs it with her other hand. And right at that moment, Mrs. Boudreaux and Mrs. Thibodeau walk into church. And Mrs. Thibodeau says, "Ooh, I don't think I'm going to go to confession today. Father Hebert's in a bad mood. Look at the penance he gave." That is typically carnivalesque laughter. And we apparently love it. If you get me started, I could tell you 1,000 story jokes in a row where this is what it's about. And Mardi Gras, the way we celebrate Mardi Gras, is a lot that way, as I hope to show you. But where is this from? What we've come to call Mardi Gras is actually a masked, brightly colored begging procession that occurs, of course, in the days before Ash Wednesday. The day right before Ash Wednesday is called Mardi Gras, but we also celebrate on Lundi Gras, Dimanche Gras, and Samedi Gras, the days before. The Gras part had to do with enjoying nutritional abundance or richness before having to do without during Lent. This traditional festival is one of several similar rituals that occur in the yearly cycle between the death of the old year, such as the ancient Samhain or more contemporary Halloween, and the rebirth of the new year, typically associated with things like Easter or May Day or some such. These rituals have common elements that express the death and rebirth symbolism characteristic of this period that runs roughly from the end of the fall harvest to the beginning of the spring planting. A time of year when it was fairly inactive, at least outside, for forming communities. Several of these celebrations add lively color to otherwise drab winter landscape. And you know this about Mardi Gras, I'll show you in just a minute. But think of also the evergreen Christmas trees with brightly colored balls that simulate fruit in an otherwise, actually nature-wise, dead period of the year. Some of these rituals have features that seem to add warmth and light to this otherwise cold and dark time of year, in the form of jack-o'-lanterns, Christmas lights, Yule logs, the New Year's bonfires that we have here, Mardi Gras flambeaux, Paschal candles. Many of these feature ceremonial food and drink gathered by begging processions. And some of these, Mardi Gras we notice, right? But also, what about Halloween candy? We go from house to house in a procession, often masked, not always. Christmas cookies. Christmas cookies are not any cookies. The guignolé, or the guiane, or the Irish mumming tradition, where they go from house to house asking for something to eat or something to drink. Christmas caroling, where you're expecting to get something to drink. Easter eggs. Easter eggs are no longer just eggs. They become symbolic because you decorate them, we hide them, we have to go out and get them. Some of this ceremonial food is loaded with symbolism, such as black eyes or cabbage on New Year's Day, bean, or baby, or what used to be the bean in the king's cake between Epiphany and Mardi Gras, of course, beans being an obvious symbol of fertility. Brightly colored eggs and chocolate bunnies. If you're celebrating a springtime fertility issue, what could be better than chocolate, which is a known aphrodisiac, and in the shape of a bunny? I rest my case. During these moments, the air is filled with sounds of gaiety during an otherwise mournful time, from Christmas carols to carnival laughter. Most of the descriptions of the Mardi Gras, most of the scholarship on our own Cajun country Mardi Gras, and almost all the media reports that up until not all that long ago focused on the celebration in Mamou or Church Point, those big horseback rides, that were pretty much all revived right after World War II, and Mamou and Eunice and Church Point being the largest and most immediately impressive. This huge questing procession of masked and costumed men on horses and wagons leaves town early in the morning under the direction and control of the captain, winds through the countryside, and returns late in the afternoon to eat and dance until midnight. In some of these, women are barred from the run, and there is some evidence in medieval European carnival tradition that this was something that was reserved for the boys, although there were some other traditions where the girls had a chance to cut up too. But generally speaking, this was a thing for young men. Their costumes reflect ancient as well as contemporary parodies, as you will see. Here's an example of a capuchon, which is a conical shaped hat, which was developed in parody of a Renaissance era, a period fashion tradition that lasted only about 60 years and was considered so perfectly ridiculous by the peasantry and the ordinary working class people that they adopted it as a symbol of foolishness. And this remains with us in the shape of the conical fool's hat as well. You can see this guy also the use of bright colors among people who didn't have access typically to bright colors or fine material. The apparent shininess, apparent silkiness of the material, and notice the extent to which this person has gone to hide his identity. Not only wearing a hat and a mask, but adding a lace layer at the bottom of the mask and a wig on top of that, and growing a beard and a little flap on the back of the hat. You notice that the use of colors is almost always in patches or harlequin sequences, where the indication was we're wearing colors exceptionally. These were the ancestors of these people would have typically worn drab, ecru, beige, gray, brown, black clothing. Is all they had available to them. And on this day, though, they pretended to be other than what they were. And this business about playing the other is an important feature in this strategy. Men dress as women, women dress as men, old as young, young as old, black as white, white as black. Sometimes multiple layers of all that going on at the same time. Notice here too that a feature of. Oh, by the way, the color thing I was going to say. The color sequence was meant to be sort of chaotic looking to attract attention, but also it was the only way they could deal with color, because the only way they could have that was to have scraps and piece them together. So it had a practical function as well as a fashion. A symbolic function. And you'll see not only conical hats like this and a screen mask. Which is common, but you'll see also mortar boards like the one on your left, which was in parody. The conical hat was in parody of the nobility, the noble ladies. The one on the left is in parody of us scholars who thought we knew every damn thing, smart asses. And the one on the right is a bishop's mitre, which was in parody of the other power during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, the church. And sometimes you'll see in early in Renaissance and medieval descriptions of Carnival, sometimes a young, unassuming boy, was chosen to be the bishop of fools or the king of fools. Once again, notice the extent to which these guys are going to preserve their anonymity. Masks are an important feature of this strategy. That is, they provide anonymity, at least temporarily, and it enables the player to play a role that is designed to fool the person they're visiting. Now, in its strictest sense, when does this work to its fullest power? When does a mask work in its fullest power? When it's hiding the identity of someone from someone who would otherwise know you. If you get somebody fly in from Chicago and go ride in the Cajun Mardi Gras, he doesn't need a mask. Nobody knows who he is. Who cares? But if your neighbor's wearing a mask and you show up and he doesn't know who you are right away, and you dance with his wife, you pretend to steal his daughter, you take a chair off the porch and go put it in the wagon. That's funny because he doesn't know who you are. Then, after, of course, invariably they'll say, "Ah ha ha, that was funny because who you are." If he does like this, he's like, "Who the hell are you? What are you?" It doesn't work. And so, in order to run Mardi Gras most effectively, my son Emil and I were having a conversation about this the other night. In order to run Mardi Gras most effectively, you have to not only know who you're running with, but you have to know who you're visiting. Or else, what are you doing there, right? Because Mardi Gras, the way we run Mardi Gras is a whole lot like the way we Christmas carol. or we go looking for Easter eggs, or we go trick-or-treating. You're supposed to go to somebody's house you know. And these processions, these begging processions, were designed to identify one's community, which is one of the reasons why Mardi Gras rarely cross bridges. You stay in your own place. For the same reason why faith healing or traiteur don't treat across running water. That's somebody else's community. You're treating your own community. So this was a way of identifying, marking your place. This is where I'm from. This is me. These are my people. I'm going to visit my world, my little world, on Mardi Gras Day. Now, the way this works, of course, some additional strategies. There's a lot of different costuming strategies. Sometimes the wildness is utilized as a strategy in order to make a point about the wildness threatening civilization on this day. And you go back to there's some some illustrations of Mardi Gras celebrations and carnival celebrations from medieval and Renaissance Europe, where people are dressed in leaves or sacks or straw or wearing horns or something, anything that represent wildness. Notice too that people play with iconography. See the chicken feet hanging from their necks? See, uh-oh, not good. Oh well. Well, it stopped listening to me altogether. That guy, see the chicken on top of his hat? I've just lost my control. Sometimes the parody is historical, preserving old parodies of the nobility or the power structures from medieval Europe. Sometimes the parodies are very contemporary. Mardi Gras is, like Cajun culture in general, very flexible, very adaptable, very improvisational, and pays attention to ongoing changes in the power structure. This was a guy at the Church Point Mardi Gras a few years ago who dressed like Jimmy Carter, who happened to be president at the time. Now, as you dress as the power structure, you pull the rug out from under it at the same time by wearing long johns and flashing people with the Jimmy Carter mask, which is made out of rubber, and the smile won't go away, and it drives you nuts, right? And of course, this was right after Carter gave the Playboy interview where he said he lusted in his heart. So he's playing on all kinds of things. And this is how it works. When the captain arrives at the house, he asks for permission, waves a flag to indicate that permission has been granted, and in some cases, the Mardi Gras storm the house, pretending to take it by force, when in fact they are beggars. And so there's this flipping of roles there. And when they get to your house, they'll fill whatever space is available. If you have a small yard, they'll fill it up. You have a big yard, they'll fill it up. If you have an acre, they'll fill it up. And do all sorts of, provide gaiety by singing, playing music, dancing, laughing, in the otherwise pretty drab winter landscape. Sometimes the Mardi Gras song, traditional Mardi Gras song, is provided by musicians who accompany the group. In other cases, the group sings the Mardi Gras song themselves. This is the Mardi Gras in Timamu. As it happens, a bunch of women and they sing the song as they approach the house. It's a questing song, a begging song. There are two essential versions of the Mardi Gras songs that we have in South Louisiana. One of them is Les Mardi Gras ça vient, Les Mardi Gras ça vient, faut pas demander la charité, which describe that they're looking for charity. They describe the events of the day. The other version of the song that is sung, it has to do with the bottle of liquor that's dwindling, and the desire to find a new bottle to fill it, to replace it. There are all sorts of playful behavior that will happen, but there is always, it happens within a very strong containment structure. Essentially, Mardi Gras is a game, in a way, and like any game, chess or checkers or anything else, you have to have rules or else it doesn't work. And the stronger the containment structure, the stronger the containment bubble, the harder the players can play. If the containment bubble is weak, if the captains don't know exactly what they're doing, if they're not real good at making sure that it doesn't get out of hand, then the players can't afford to play as hard as they would ordinarily. The stronger the structure, the harder the play can be, the more they can afford to take a chance. Now, if you look at this image, the edge of Mardi Gras runs right here. That guy on the roof is going to take a chance. He's going to push the edge a little bit, but he won't actually go and grab that little girl who's been placed up there thinking she'd be out of the way, unless he knows her really well or her dad is there to make sure it's okay. But there's a love of threatening order like that. And of course, the point of the day comes eventually. I wish I could figure out what happened here. Where in our case, the point of the begging procession is to acquire the ingredients to a communal meal, a gumbo, that will be eaten at the end of the day or maybe the next day by all the people who participate, and typically all the people they visit as well. Everybody's invited. It was a way of having a last grand meal before everybody was going to have to fast again. Now, think about it. It's a great social strategy. If everybody's going to have to do without, because when is this? It's toward the end of winter. Crops are not coming in yet, just starting to plant them. And so the winter, what you've put away for the winter is starting to dwindle, and there's not a whole lot left. You're going to have to do without anyway. What's the best way to get everybody to go along with doing without? Have everybody participate in a big blowout. That way they feel they have a stake in it. Oh, I ate a lot. I owe them, right? So it was a great social strategy to enlist solidarity and participation in the process. Catching a chicken was the big deal in many of the Mardi Gras around here. Because they were making a gumbo, and so they were getting out. If the point had been only to collect chickens, the farmer would have just given you one or killed one earlier and given it to you. But the point is not only to collect chickens. The point is also to generate carnivalesque activity. And so how do you do that? Well, you throw the chicken alive. Now, it's not easy to catch a chicken. A live chicken on the run, especially when you're wearing a costume and you've got a mask on and you've got a hat this high tied real tight to your head, and the chicken's on home turf. It knows its way around. You don't necessarily always know your way around, and chickens can go way faster under barbed wire fences than people can. So all of those things combine, and people are drinking alcohol. Mind-altering substance consumption is a very strong feature of rites of passage. All over the world, you shoot peyote or take some sort of drug, mushrooms or whatever, to go into a dream state while you're transitioning. right? Well, our mind-altering substance of choice in Europe was alcohol, fermented drink. And so people are doing this to make the chicken even harder to catch. And people falling all over themselves is hilarious to the farm owner, right? He's giving you a chicken, something very valuable, because chickens lay eggs, and eggs were money. And chicken and you know, poultry was valuable meat, Sunday dinner. He's giving you something very valuable. So what he's expecting to get in return is entertained. He's expecting you to make him laugh. If you catch the chicken right away, everybody goes, oh, let it go again. Right? Try again. And if chickens were just food, just contributions to the gumbo, you wouldn't see all those gestures of holding them in the air like footballs, or you know, some kind of, you know, the guy who catches the chicken is the champion of the moment, the hero of the moment. This is the Oberlin Mardi Gras, sort of strung out along the road under the leadership of the captain. They go from house to house. And eventually come back at the end of the day, where usually where they started, many of them are circular, some of them are linear. They start somewhere and end up somewhere else, but typically they come back to what they consider the hub of their community, where they are typically received by people who greet them as returning warriors or hunters or providers or whatever, because they're coming with a bunch of chickens and make gumbo for everybody, right? And one of the things that happens, as you can see from this slide, is the disruption of public space. Like, you know, while they're doing this, traffic has to stop. While they're doing this, banks typically close. You don't want somebody with a mask on walking into a bank. I mean, or grocery stores close, you know, merchants typically close. This is the arrival of the Basile Mardi Gras in town, and as you can see, it's just sort of taken over what would be the town square if they had one, just out there in the middle of the street with one last song to sing. These are the guys who take care of the gumbo making. The players who are all, the hard players are all wearing brightly colored costumes and masks. They're the ones everybody notices. But these guys are the infrastructure, the invisible infrastructure that enables this thing to happen. They're the ones who are actually slaughtering and plucking and processing the chickens. They're the ones who drive the wagon. They're the ones who hand out the beer. They're the captains who are not masked, who are running the thing, making sure it happens the right way. A lot of times it's ladies making the gumbo. Now, what you see here, and here we're going to go into some carnival strategies. This is a typical moment of carnivalesque humor. The guy you see in the striped costume with the bishop's mitre on his head is actually a deacon in his church. So he's a serious member of the religious community, an ordained deacon. But he's running Mardi Gras. So how does he run? He runs as the bishop, right? He's about to be irreverent within his own loop, within his own, social loop. But right before they left, they decided we ought to say a prayer just so nobody gets hurt. They turned to the deacon, who's dressed in a mock bishop outfit. And so, like, a bunch of people now who would notice this? You wouldn't have known that unless I told you. But everybody who's there is in the community. See, Mardi Gras humor works most fully like a mask does. It works within the community. If you know who's who and what's what and who's where and what's going on. You have to understand the social dynamics within the community. Now, they're all saying a very serious prayer, but as I took this photograph, I could hear everybody chuckling at the same time. Now, you typically don't chuckle while you pray, but it's a perfect Mardi Gras moment. If the deal is to disrupt traffic and ordinary space, and if the issue is to wear these capuchons, You can take a highway marker and put it on your head and stop somebody and beg for money. The guy said, well, I figured he wouldn't run me over. I had a highway marker on my head. And it coincidentally looks like a capuchon. Now, here again is a quintessential Mardi Gras moment. Can everybody see what's about to happen? This is like a joke right before the punchline. The person chasing that chicken, now you can see here and here, these are people who have chased the chicken that's run through the woods. Now chickens live there. So where eventually is this chicken going to run? To the chicken coop, right? These people have missed. This one doesn't even realize it's made a circle. This one is about to catch it. This one knows what's about to happen. So does this one. What's about to happen is that this chicken is going to run under this chicken coop, and this person has forgotten that that hat is securely tied to her head. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. It went like, and somebody else caught the chicken. If chickens are the deal, and capuchons are the deal, and these chickens are not just chickens, they are Mardi Gras symbols, you can dress a chicken with a capuchon and put it on a leash, right? It turns it into something of a Mardi Gras mascot. These chickens are no longer just chickens any more than an Easter egg is just an egg. In a way that the medieval scholar Le Roi Ladurie described carnival items like this as being swollen with meaning, pregnant with meaning. If chickens are the typical victim of the day, and you're at war with Saddam Hussein the first time, and you got a bunch of boys who would ordinarily be running Mardi Gras with you, not there because they're off in Iraq. This was the first Gulf War. You can dress a guy as a chicken and be the aggressor of the day, but have Saddam Hussein's head as the prize, flipping things in a remarkably perceptive, immediately socially conscious way, with an American flag flying from the truck. All kinds of things going on. If chickens and hats are some of the issues of the day, you can turn a chicken into a hat by putting it on somebody's head. Now, what do chickens do a lot? Which makes putting it on your head a funny thing, or putting it on somebody else's head funnier. Unless you're prepared for the moment and you have a little hat that rolls up to catch the little crotte, right? Now this guy caught this rooster, the Grand Mardi Gras, with great effort. And he had a healthy run at it. Figured the chicken did too. They both took a cigarette break. Now, lest the animal rights activists get all worked up here, in the first place, Mardi Gras does not care. Sorry, Mardi Gras doesn't care. Mardi Gras laughter is very edgy. It can address race. It can address gender. It can address age. It can address It can address all kinds of things. But I hasten to point out that this fellow who has turned a rooster into his hat, tied, as you see, by Mardi Gras beads, hey, all kinds of layers. Whenever you see a Mardi Gras moment, look for the layers. There's usually a lot of layers going on. He had become so attached to his new hat that rooster ended up not going into the gumbo. It was released on parole. It died a few months later of lung cancer, but not really. Cigarette break, beer break. Everybody else is taking a beer break. Chicken ran too. Now, interestingly, chickens actually do like beer because it's made with grain, you know. There's a guy with a raccoon on his head. Hats are thing. Playing with cultural iconography. He's obviously playing with the coon-ass thing. Makes people uncomfortable. Too bad. Mardi Gras doesn't care. Mardi Gras does not care. Mardi Gras laughter is a little bit like tickling. If you touch somebody just in the right spot, you make him laugh. You touch too hard, and it hurts. And also, like when you're being tickled, you know, it makes you laugh, but you wish it would stop. You know, Mardi Gras laughter is a little bit like nervous laughter a lot of times. So this guy, not only is he making a coon-ass statement, but he's got this damn thing splayed out where you can really see the butt of the coon right on top of his head. These guys caught a live coon. They found a live coon caught in a trap, a trapper's trap alongside of the road. Gave it a bit of beer and turned it loose. Here's Mardi Gras. You get a reprieve. It's sacred time, it's liminal time, it's ludic time, it's playful time. You're not supposed to be serious on Mardi Gras. If you see somebody dressed, you know, in all of that garb, that mask and the hat and all this stuff, he's screaming at you, don't take me seriously. I'm playing today. I'm a banker, or I'm a car salesman, or I'm a farmer, a successful rice farmer, but today I'm nuts. Today, don't take anything out too seriously, which always blows my mind when a journalist from the New York Times will walk up to somebody dressed like that and say, what's the meaning of Mardi Gras? And I'm thinking, oh man, you're about to get taken for the biggest ride of your life, you know, and not even know it. Reversal. As I said earlier, reversal, playing the other, is a crucial element of Mardi Gras. Turning yourself into something that you're not only not, but the opposite, is what people have long considered funny. Even to the point of just turning your clothes inside out and having all the seams exposed, you know? But here, this young man has turned himself into his dad. He's got a mustache. He's a little bitty tiny version of his dad on a Shetland pony. He looks like his dad got shrunk, right? This kid's gone a step further. Now, normally he's wearing that beard, so he's sort of symbolically aged himself, right? And he's drinking a Schlitz can. Now, it turns out, I interviewed him, turns out that he was drinking Coke out of that can. But he said, boy, you talk about it's really bugging the old ladies, man. He knew exactly what he was doing. This is a black Creole man from Elton, near Elton, who has whitened his face in a kind of a reversal of the sort of, you know, old minstrelsy blackface thing. He's whitened his face. Now, this is funny within that community. This is even funnier. This is a black Creole guy who's got a Navajo shirt on, and he's got a white hood on his face. Not only that, but he's got ridiculously accentuated red lips, which black Creoles tell me is funny about white people. If you're going to caricature them, if you're going to cartoon them, you know, it's rosy cheeks and red lips. So he's sort of making fun of that. This is a black Creole woman dressed as a white Cajun man. With a little mustache on, rosy cheeks. Now, it's only funny if it's apparent. You have to see the punchline for it to work. She's not hiding her breasts, right? She's letting us know that she's a woman, but that's the funny part. This black Creole woman is wearing a white pig mask. And Mardi Gras doesn't care, right? This is a Cajun guy wearing an American Indian getup, and they're going through the Coshada Reservation. If he was like, if he was trying to pull something, racist or ugly about it, he wouldn't be going through. This is funny. The Coshada people saw him and said, "Garde le vieux Cajun habillé comme un sauvage." Look at that old Cajun guy dressed like an Indian. Ha ha ha! Everybody was laughing, both sides. See, the other side, the other way was just funny. This one's a little creepy, right? Mardi Gras doesn't care, I'm sorry. This is a white Cajun guy a young white Cajun guy dressed as an old black Creole woman. 3 times, flipping himself. And obviously playing on the Aunt Jemima thing, all kinds of things going on there. If you're going to caricature it, sometimes it can be really rough, right? Now, interestingly, the obvious there is that these are white people dressed with black masks on. But the other side of it is, this is a woman and this is a man. I know. So, if you walk up to them and they know you, the man dressed as a woman would go kiss a man. But it's not his real lips. So, all kinds of things going on, swirling around. If you're going to play a woman, flirt. I mean, why not? You know? You want to make somebody really uncomfortable, but kiss them. You see a lot of folk drama, folk theater as well during Mardi Gras. Here, some ladies they saw a little flooded ditch, and so they ran and got some sticks and are pretending to fish, with no line or bait or anything else. But it's folk theater. Here, they're going on a real fishing expedition with a boat on a trailer, loading it up with ice chests. Pretending to fish with a rubber hose. You go and visit people right next to crawfish ponds, so you go check the traps. Why not? And it looks like they're doing what? Biblical. Looking like they're walking on water. Now wait, what's that supposed to make the owner of the pond feel like? Yeah, that's funny, but y'all gonna leave those crawfish, right? Somebody dressed obviously to play on a work implement. So those contrasts, those whirling contrasts. Using a mop as a scepter to bless everybody. Baptize. Pretending to steal a ladder. Pretending to steal tires. Hiding in a trash bin to make yourself difficult to move along. The only way they can go to the next house is if they're sure they have everybody. Well, if you hide, you disrupt that process, right? Barbecuing a plastic horse. Not only stealing a wheelbarrow, but taking a ride at the same time. And this business about whipping, there's several Mardi Gras that we discovered, mostly west of Highway 13, that use whipping as a motive, as a motif. And you can notice that I mean, nobody's going to really whip anybody to hurt them, right? But it looks really, impressive. Notice how the woman dressed in the black costume is negotiating the moment. You see her hand? It's like, oh yeah, I know I got to get whipped because I was stealing something, but be careful not too hard. There's like a dance that's going on there. See a four-wheeler or anything you play with, trampoline. Now, see, that's already kind of funny, but what else do you notice? If one of the points can be to make yourself difficult to move along, trampolines do what? They collapse toward the middle. All the Mardi Gras are in the middle. The captains are trying to get them off because it's time to go. What's going to happen? A captain's going to have to get up there in them. That's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a wild wrestling match going on there. This was, I could not have anticipated this. I saw these guys jump out of the wagon. The wagon is going around the corner to that house that you see in the background. They jumped off and we're going to short circuit the thing and found this madrier, what do you do, madrier, Ray? A beam, those heavy beams that they used to use for footbridges. And so they're going to take a shortcut, right? And the first one went across, noticed it was springy, and he just ran across. The second one started doing, the routine. The third one did an Olympic balance beam routine. He cut a front flip on that thing and nailed the landing. And his buddies went. They gave him a 10 because he stuck the landing. These guys decided to see if they could walk on water. It works temporarily. If you have a running start, as you can see, the one in the front, notice that you sink after a while. The second one is still hopeful. He bounced on the first lick. Here is a young white man dressed as an old black woman, but beyond that, doing something profane while pretending to do something sacred. She's healing that girl because that girl's drinking a beer. She said, "You're going to have a hangover tomorrow. I'm going to heal you by laying hands." And then she went a step beyond that with the guy standing next to her. I know. She gave him ashes. With the paint off of her face, she gave him ashes. Ash Wednesday's the next day. It's sacred. This is profane. Blurring that line was stunning. Here's another blur. Begging, if begging is the tradition, you'll get down real low and accentuate it. In these remarkable gestures of supplication. This guy was asking this old lady, "Can you spare a little something for Mardi Gras? Our gumbo is real thin and weak, and we could sure use a little help for our gumbo." She said, "Well, I don't have any chickens anymore." He said, "Well, can you spare a little money?" She said, "Well, yeah, I guess I could give you all some money." He said, "Can you give us $1?" She said, "Well, yeah, I can give you $1." He said, "Could you give us 5?" She said, "Well, maybe I could give you 5. He said, "Could you give us 10? It's like begging, with escalating stakes. This lady noticed that this guy who was walking up to her on his knees to beg, which is the traditional pose, was on his knees, and she had a picnic table that she was using to have some, refreshments for people who came to her house to witness the arrival of the Mardi Gras. And she got a potato chip and gave him communion. I know. Mardi Gras doesn't care. He happens to be a profoundly religious man. She knows that. She knows who he is. She knew that disturbed him mightily and took great relish in that. And took great relish in the fact that he could not refuse her. He was on his knees in a Mardi Gras position, his regular position in the community. Be damned, she was going to give him communion. There's a guy dressed as a monk giving communion routinely with biscuits. The only thing is that you had to put the whole thing in your mouth at one time. And it was a big biscuit. These same guys, by the way, were going around with, no, it was later. I'll show you to in a minute. And here, you can, all this whipping business, in that shot you can see all the strategy involved. What's going on? It seems to be a brutal practice, a brutal game. But look at everybody's face. Everybody's face. Everybody's laughing. And this is what it's all about, is generating that laughter. Sometimes it's laughing through tears. Oops, sorry. This guy found an electric cattle prod and was moving people along. It's a modern whip. Part of the game is making yourself difficult to move along. Get in a tree. Really hard. People who notice that people get up in trees, use it. See what's at the top? Right here. This guy's pinned money in the tree to get everybody up. This is the Grand Marais run, which is a very interesting, based on very interesting game of folk drama. Basically, if they receive a healthy enough donation, they'll sit in a circle and sing their song, after which they'll accuse people of doing some transgression. It could be absolutely anything, like dancing with the mailbox on your way in, or not singing the song right, or, you know, I don't know, it's anything. It doesn't matter. It's a kangaroo court. And everybody's going to get accused. Whoever gets accused is going to be convicted. The way they indicate that you've been accused is by taking your hat. You're supposed to have a hat. If you're without a hat, you're out of line. And the captain gathering the hats there. And then they line up everybody tête à pied, head to feet to head to feet, right? In a group, and they will have ritual flogging. This guy with his hands like this, asking for pardon. It's not going to work. Here, there are two of the payas. They're called payas, the ones who do the whipping, who are trying to get away because they've been accused. Negotiating. You can't get whipped on anything but your butt. So if you need to negotiate, you turn over. Can't get whipped like that. Here he is trying to ride his buddy out. Might escape that way, unseen. And here is a tradition of covering your fellow soldiers to protect them from the blows. But it never works, because what they do is sort that out and then give you blows anyway. You're whipping anyway. And getting covered when you're lying face down on a limestone parking lot is a mixed blessing. Take it from me, I've been down there. Here's another result of a mock hanging, folk drama. A mock trial. Here they hang someone. He's been accused of something or other. And they're going to, of course, not hang him really, put the rope around here, but they whip the horse out from under him just like in the Wild West, and he hangs and he dies. And then his friends came around and danced and sang the Mardi Gras song and dropped beer in his mouth. And lo and behold, it worked. He was revived. And this is a very old folk drama that has been reported as far back as about the 12th or 13th century. It's called The Dead Man Revived. And it's still, now, you think those people in Elton know that? No, they just do that because Grandpa did it or something. These guys were dressed as nurses. Now, nurses are supposed to take care of you. And it's always good to have, first responders along with you. But what they were doing was They had filled these horse syringes with whiskey, and they were going around curing people by squirting it down your mouth. I saw what they were doing, and they wanted to come and cure me. He said I was looking peaked, and I said, no, it's okay. I saw what you were doing. No, it's okay. It's funny though. It's good. I appreciate that. No, he said, man, you look really bad. You got a fever and everything. No. I said, no. I get it. I don't want any. He said, the guy leans over. He says, don't fight it. He said, it's going to happen anyway. And it's true. Look at them. They're linebackers on the Elton football team. It happened. Here's another useful position of the dead man revived. You die in the street, traffic has to stop, and then what happens? People go and collect from the people who stop. They collect money. These guys refer to themselves as a rolling toll booth. Now, it looks interesting from the outside, but look at what it looks like from the inside. This little old lady had to come up with some money. Now, any other time you stop traffic with a mask on and demand money, it's called highway robbery, you get arrested. On Mardi Gras Day, it's not only tolerated, it's appreciated. These people this was on Highway 26, and they were just tourists. They were going to a campground, This was my favorite one. I mean, chickens and money, fine, but you're drinking beer, man. I mean, The natural light guy playing along with this is a good indication that Mardi Gras pervades our social infrastructure. Here, all the Basile Mardi Gras gathered around this woman, and they're singing to her, singing a begging song, hoping she gives them something. But look at the guy to her left. He's got her leg. Okay, so there's a vast difference between genuinely begging and saying, would you please give me a little bit of money for my thing? We really need, we could sell this. We could sell this. Now, meanwhile, you're hopping out there thinking, man, this is not a good place. I'll give you $1 to get my shoe back, right? So, all kinds of interesting interactions. There's a very fine line between beggar and outlaw, or beggar and thief, out there. While this guy's getting coins out of his front pockets, his hands were immobilized, and they've stuck their hands in the back pocket and got some bills out. Negotiating a visit has all kinds of interesting implications. This guy, because he gave money, gets to kiss a pretty girl. With his wife standing right there, and she can't get mad. He gave some money. She wanted to give him a kiss in return. So everybody gets something out of this. Reversal is the order of the day. And I'm telling you, it only works if the punchline is clear. This guy dressed as a woman is funny because you can see his hairy legs, his hairy arms. He's got a ridiculous mask on it, wild red hair, cyclops eye, stopping traffic, pretending she's pretty to stop traffic. This guy is obvious. Got a hairy chest sticking out of a bikini top. This is funny. This is not. It's too well pulled off. Now, it turns out I talked to this guy. He was from New Orleans. He heard about the dressing as women, and he figured, that'd be a nice costume. But he pulled it off too much. There's no clue that he's joking. There's no clue that he's pretending. This guy is telling you, I'm pretending. Look at the abs. Are you kidding me? This is my son, Louis, who recognized that not only wearing your clothes inside out, but wearing your underwear outside, right? Your outerwear as outerwear would be funny. It would accentuate the notion that a boy was dressed as a woman. But it does more than that. Look at his panties. They pull up his dress so he can run fast and catch the chicken. like, symbolic and practical applications all balled into one. Two guys, one dressed as a old man, one dressed as an old woman, with a see-through nightie with false plastic breasts. It was not pretty. Throw me something, mister? Except that is mister. With fake boobs. This guy had been at one point more successfully dressed as a woman earlier in the day. He's lost a lot of it. He's lost his wig, he's lost some makeup, but he's still somehow pulling this off. His foam is exposed, but he's somehow pulling this off. But look at the wild look in his eyes. And he's pulling it off because he's playing effectively. I know. And then right after that, he kissed a girl. And then he kissed me. But another thing, and we're getting to the end, another thing about this, one of the things that I've noticed out there about strategy is that some people can play harder than others. The guys who are pretending to kidnap women, that can be funny, but you can't play that too hard because it resembles too much actual social tensions, right? So this guy who's got his arms around this woman, that's actually her husband. And notice he's being very careful anyway, right? Again, this guy, this is his girlfriend. He's got his arms around her waist, being very careful not to touch any sensitive areas. And she's laughing because she knows that's her boyfriend. Again, this is a man and his wife. Pretending to kidnap women is a thing. Women kidnapping kids, that is funny. And you can play a lot harder because women are perceived to be the caretakers, and when that goes berserk, that's funny. And so women kidnapping kids, turns out, can be really rough. Literally turning people upside down. That's Emile. Feeling a little bit iffy about being in that wagon with all those masked women. Rightfully so. He's expecting his dad to come and help him, and I was taking a picture. If you understand that whips are obvious phallic symbols and symbol of control and power that are being that can be reversed, a man grabbing another man's whip is funny. A woman grabbing a man's whip is way funnier, especially if he's got it between his legs like a tail and causing him to pull her like a little carnival ride. A woman who gets a whip from a man, symbolically emasculating him, is fun, not only funny but dangerous. It has to be fixed and quickly. This is horrifying and funny. Women improvising a bigger phallic symbol, facing that man's little limp whip, is really funny. And they knew that it was funny. Women immobilizing an ordinarily dominant man, a guy who was a football player on the Iota high school team, and a guy who has a hard time dealing with this. Well, who are they going to hit? The guy who has a hard time dealing with it, right? Here they're riding this guy's, and this is his daddy coming to help him get the women off. This is Frank DeCaro getting taken down by women, about to pull his pants off, as you can see here, right here. And the captain, of course, has to come and help. Women can play very hard. Now, again, if you understand whips as phallic symbols, the smallest male Mardi Gras with the biggest whip is funny. Hanging on the ground. Women improvising active phallic symbols with a hose, spraying everybody, is funny. Except that you have to fix that. And there's going to be a price to pay. And hoses can be kinked, rendering them ineffective, and then unkinked. Where you get a good dousing. Guy had gas. Absolutely Rabelaisian. Rabelais in the 16th century thought farts were hilarious. And so did we. And so this guy pulling up to a gas tank, getting ready. This next couple of slides may be a little... The women in Basile improvising a much more visual phallic symbol under a skirt, under an apron, domestic symbol for women. Pick it up, and there, something unexpected. And when you pick it up, it is up. By the way, the woman with the apron is the mayor of town. The woman laughing hysterically at her side is a school teacher. Every person in there is a school teacher who are responsible for the upbringing and education of our children. But on this day, all those bets are off, right? Because what it's about is generating laughter. And Mardi Gras doesn't care. It actually does care. It cares that it makes you laugh. It doesn't care that you're nervous. But it will make you laugh. And if you don't, it will escalate and escalate and escalate. Ray, were you there when Maida, when they were working on the film and she was operating the clapper, And she was a vet. She'd been around, she'd seen this, she'd done research, she knew about it, she knew about the hard play. And the Timamu men were pushing the limits, and doing everything, trying to steal the clapper and doing all kinds of stuff. And nothing was rattling her. She was going along, oh yeah, I know. You couldn't figure out what it was going to take. But Mardi Gras will get to you. It will get to you somehow. And what happened was, what finally got to her was very subtle in a way. This guy who had this animal pelt mask on and a long phallic nose with a bell on the end came up to her and sniffed her. And she freaked. It was so bestial. She finally said, I quit, God, I quit it through the club. I've had enough of this, it's ridiculous. And then she realized, got me. And she went back in and laughed. Some people can't take it. I saw a filmmaker who will go unnamed genuinely run back to his car and lock himself in before the women of Basile could get to him. I was very disappointed in him because I thought he would be able to play. He was doing a film on the Mardi Gras. He told me about 2 months ago that he had had to do that because he wasn't wearing underwear. And he knew that they were going to strain the edges. Anyway, those are a few examples of efforts to generate carnivalesque laughter. Before I quit, a lot of people are often wondering about the whip thing. These are the ones like they're used, and you can imagine, I've come back home with bruises on my butt. But there are ways to play with this. Can I have a volunteer? Oh! An S&M guy. We see, actually, person to do this, right?
Why do you say that?
Well, because you want it. Oh, a second. That's all right, I'll get that later. Because you want it so much, we shouldn't do it with you. Huh?
I don't want it.
Oh, you don't want it so much? Then get down. Okay, lie down.
Lie down?
Yeah, lie down.
Hey, we never...
No, lie down. Lie down. I'm not asking you. All the way down. Cover your face. Never can tell what's going to happen. Now, this is, Carnival is not actually out to hurt anybody, although it can sting a little bit. Don't move, it'll get worse. But this is how it can happen. Right? Or you're supposed to jump when I do it. Ready? There. If you go right over them, it makes a big impression, but doesn't actually hurt. That does. How many licks? He's already had 2. How about just 1 more? And this is what would typically happen. All right, you've been a good sport. Thank you. You look like you need one. No, you okay? Any questions before we turn you loose? By the way, if you go out to see any of these Mardi Gras, take some quarters. Take a lot of quarters. Because they're going to get something. And it just as soon not be a 20. But if you don't have quarters, it may be a 20. I actually saw a guy at the Basile Mardi Gras with a working credit card machine. They're going to get something. They will get something. You will participate. If they want to dance with you, dance. If they take your shoe, let it go. It'll come back. If they take your glasses, if you just let it go. It'll come back. Go along with it. Play along. Don't impose yourself into it. You're not in the Mardi Gras. They will draw you in to the extent that they want you to be in. But if they, if you're a pretty girl or a handsome boy, you're out there with the women's Mardi Gras, and if you get pulled in, go. Don't fight it. Thank you. I thought you would give me a quarter. What? Any questions? Yes. Well, interestingly, in some ways, if you don't know where to go, you shouldn't go there. But there are some Mardi Gras that are more easily visitable than others, like the big ones, Eunice, Mamou, Church Point, Elton. You can just find out where the route is going to be. Usually, that's not all that hard to find out, and just go place yourself along the route. Ideally, if you see somebody outside, ready to receive the Mardi Gras, politely go and ask, is it okay if I stand on your driveway or yard? Typically, people are altogether willing to do that because it adds to the festivities. It's usually not very successful to follow them because they end up developing these long corteges, and the people who are a quarter of a mile back don't even know that they're stopped somewhere or doing anything. I mean, if you enjoy driving 5 miles an hour through the countryside in a traffic jam, all right, but there are better. If you're not running Mardi Gras, the best way to experience it is to be somewhere where it comes. Any questions? There you go. And if anybody's interested in some reinforcement, I have a little, they have one of the books that we did with the Center for Louisiana Studies on the South Louisiana Mardi Gras. It was in 1989, I think, and it needs to be updated soon, but It's got some pretty good information in it, I think. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about Mardi Gras before World War II?
The Mardi Gras before World War II was pretty much like we are doing now, except that it might have been less motorized in some places. The reason why some people are going around in trucks and wagons these days and not on horses is because there are fewer houses out in the countryside. As people moved to town for salaried jobs. And so as the countryside was emptying, it became harder to hit enough houses to make it worthwhile. So we've seen Ray in fact did some beautiful research years ago in around the town of Iota, where he found that what had previously been about 4 or 5 smaller runs had consolidated into a larger run. Now, interestingly, what's happening now is that some of those larger runs are rebounding back out into smaller runs, like the Ancelet, because sometimes you're visiting people you don't know in a part of the countryside that you don't know. Whereas if you're at a smaller run in your own neighborhood, it makes more sense. We've seen several. I've seen several splintering out of larger runs like that. The Lance Meg run out of the Mamu run. Fikitaik out of the Eunice run. So well, what an attentive audience. Go out there, hope you have a good time. Bring some quarters, avoid the whips, and enjoy yourselves.